this gap between regular training and fight level training. Means you think about coaches, to what level of discipline, to what level of commitment, to what level of taking on the pain necessary are we really doing?
Okay, Coaches Commonplace book. Dean, good to be with you.
Brilliant, Miller. Always a pleasure.
So, Dean, before we started recording here, I was asking you about the cool background that you've designed for yourself there. I said, it looks like you've got a great new designer to help you spruce up your space. What's going on?
Yes, full disclosure, green screen. Oh, look, my highlighter disappeared. Right, green screen. It's magic. Oh, I was using the blurry background for a while, and I'm like, okay, listen, I can't go into 2023 with a continuation of this blurred thing. So I thought I found something new, Canva, and I told my kids, this thing's amazing. Even I, old man me, can do some amazing things here. And my kids are like, Dad, we've been using this for like 6 years. And I was like, what? Nobody told me. Yeah. So we're able to take our logo. My microphone just showed up. Not sure how I did that. Top 10, remember to smile.
But the books are real, coaches, right? Books, those have got to be real, Dean.
No, not real. No, the Pick My Brain. I want to talk about that when you're ready.
Yeah, tell me about that. So Pick My Brain. I was reading that over your shoulder. Why this?
PickMyBrain.world. If you're listening to this, hit pause, go dial this thing up. Is that the words? Go click it. PickMyBrain.world. Maxine Cunningham is the founder creator of this site and just has this vision for Tim, how easy can we make it to share knowledge? So I think about the Kauffman Foundation has the Million Cups with the idea of every Wednesday you could be in any major city, I think at 8 a.m. and go have a cup of coffee and bring in entrepreneurs and solution-based individuals with those that want to invest, because the Kauffman Foundation believes that's how we make the world better.
Yeah.
Maxine,
connections.
Go ahead.
By the way, just to jump in on that, I remember reading when I read the Steve Jobs biography by Walter Isaacson, when he got to the part about when Jobs bought Pixar, or that whole thing happened, that they were looking at redesigning the offices, and he got really hands-on in the layout because he knew that if he could create a space that would encourage these random connections between people in different departments, that it would benefit the company overall. So kind of what you're saying here is, whether it's in the world, whether it's in an organization, whether it's something we could do in our own home, bumping into, maybe our kids a little more often, that these kind of connections strengthen our lives, right?
Yes. And I love the language that Maxine has chosen here, a Pick My Brain. I don't know, something about that, just the way that imagery resonated with me. And so you sign up, thousands already have, maybe even tens of thousands. And the site's getting better of, you can pick very, very specifically what you're looking for. My suggestion was, how cool will it be to have like a Spotify playlist of people? Like, I want a fall pumpkin spicy kind of a feel of people that I want to go pick their brains. And so let it pull out a top 10 list. So whether I want to do that over the course of the month or the course of a year, let me just go follow this playlist. So last night, the first brain I've picked, my brain's been picked 3 times now. Loved it. I picked this woman's brain. She's the first Iranian woman to win the world championship in kickboxing. And for 30 minutes, I have access to her to pick her brain. And I'm asking her all kinds of questions about that level of discipline, and winners want to win, and what's your relationship to not winning. Yeah, go ahead.
Why did you pick her? And how much do you see about a person? Do you see their name and their credentials, or what do you see, and how and why did you choose her?
Yeah. So each individual creates their own biography, and some of them are just very, very academic, and some of them are just very silly and more of a playful side. There was something about her and her bio and these pictures that she has. You're just intrigued to, I've got to know the story. Because she talks about when she first started her training in Iran, she had to wear the full clothing, the hijab, and fully covered while doing kickboxing. Wow. And And so women in that culture, I'm not an expert there, but really of lower value. And just she's constantly being told, you can't do this. You can't do this. You can't do this. And not only did she do it, she won the world championship.
Wow.
So I wanted to talk to her. And so one of the phrases that she said, Ray, and I'll never forget it, of just how far off regular training is from fight training. So I know so many of us that ride our Peloton and like, I'm ready for the Tour de France.
Yeah.
or I walk my neighborhood. I am clearly ready for something in the Olympics. This gap between regular training and fight level training means you think about coaches. To what level of discipline, to what level of commitment, to what level of taking on the pain necessary are we really doing? So she talked about how bruised her leg was, and yet her coach then had her do 500 more leg kicks.
Wow.
That's fight level training. Fascinating. Pickmybrain.world. Unbelievable people that have made themselves available for free to help share knowledge. Amazing concept.
That's really cool. That thing too that you're saying about the regular training versus fight level training, immediately where my mind went was then to fighting, right? Because I'll bet it's another experience again. And in some way, although we can differ our training from just going through the motions and quote unquote regular training to fight level training, that in some ways you can't really recreate the experience of a fight. It's just you're in it. But once you get hit, right? The tendency is to lose all that training in that moment. But that's, and she talked about that, of how to get to that fight level training, you have to have that level of testing, right? You really have to be hit. You have to be put in the most uncomfortable of situations so that you know and trust that you can get yourself back out of that. But that's what I've been diving into since we last talked, and those types of topics. Right on.
What about you?
So I know this beginning portion of these Coaches Commonplace books, we usually talk about what we've termed our information diet. What are we consuming? What have we been taking in? One thing I'll just say here, I finally got with the rest of the world and I saw Top Gun Maverick. I didn't realize it actually had left theaters and then came back. So I was able to go see it in IMAX.
Yeah, nice work.
So I did see that. And I think it's the perfect Hollywood film, isn't it? Did you see it?
Oh yeah. I cried.
Yeah. Perfect Hollywood film. So anyway, that was part of my information diet. I don't know where that came from. It wasn't one of the things I wrote down to share with you what I've got. And the first thing, by the way, I know in these conversations, we like to have a little bit of structure beyond just what have we been consuming and even how has it been blessing our lives and improving our lives, but also toward the end, sharing something that can help us to live a good life, something that can help us as coaches to earn recognition and money, and something that can help us to be a great coach or be more effective. So the first thing in my info diet is actually, I'm going to jump ahead to the thing that I think can help us to live well, to live a good life. And it's what I've not been consuming. Somebody along my learning journey had introduced me to the concept of a not doing now list. Right. And so much personal growth is about doing more. It's about these tricks and these hacks and these, routines and systems and processes and practices and all this that we just add and we layer and we layer and we layer. It can become really, really stressful. And someone introduced me to this idea of, maybe there's a time and a place for that to be sure. But what about the stuff that you're consciously cutting out? What about something to create space in your life, whether it's for rest, whether it's for reflection, whether it's, for some other kind of growth to appear. But I actually follow that now of a not doing now list. So I have it. There's about 5 or 6 things on it. And from time to time, I have to revisit it. I get to revisit it and look at what are the things that I committed to myself that I'm not doing now that I'm actually doing now.
Yeah. Give us an example.
The top one is scrolling social media or online news mindlessly. And I don't know about you, but I actually really like Google News. I like that it curates things that I find interesting.
Yeah.
And I would find that in moments throughout each day, I'll bet and I'm sure I could go use an app and calculate this, but I was probably using 30 minutes a day in little pockets, a minute here, 3 minutes there. It would just be kind of like a mindless go-to if I was waiting for my daughter to finish brushing her teeth, or right when I woke up in the morning, or sometimes even if I was in the car waiting for the light to turn green. Like, I mean, that's how ridiculous it was.
Yeah. Now, did you fill it with something else mindless?
No, what I will do now over the last couple of weeks since I revisited and recommitted to what was on my not doing now list is I would be aware of the impulse to check that. And then I would consciously be present. I would either tune into my breath, or I would notice something in my environment, or I would repeat some kind of a mantra. Or
that's really good. I like that. I like that.
And I felt more peace. I realized, there's no real finish line in life. I mean, we die eventually, but this thing, so it's not like the answer, but it's been a great practice over the last couple of weeks.
Have you found yourself disappointed now that you've come to realize how often the brilliant Miller has been mindlessly scrolling?
No, not at all. I really do have this belief that we're just these sophisticated organisms, maybe not all that sophisticated, with this evolutionary and biological heritage. And there are definitely parts to us. There's these different parts. There's our body, maybe there's our spirit, there's our mind, this kind of thing. And more I have cultivated the witness attitude, or the observer, right? And what I attempt to do with that is compassion and just noticing. And it's like, oh, there it is again. There's that tendency, just like, oh, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, whatever.
Yeah. Brilliant. I'll tell you what, you're so consistent in how serious you can be in observational and to be a witness, and at the same time, be so kind to yourself and be so kind to others, not in a mediocrity type of a way, but in this paradoxical type of this is meaningful and I will stop doing that. And yet when you find yourself doing what you said you wouldn't do, you're kind to yourself.
Yeah.
Just nice work on that.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And I realize, all human behavior really does seem to be a series of patterns. And there's the patterns we like and the patterns we don't like, and the ones that work for us and the ones that don't, and some that do until they don't. And, and I've done this before. Like I was remembering, I went through this media diet, this news diet a couple years ago. And I just figured if something important happens, someone else will tell me, which is maybe not the most intelligent thing. But I'll always remember that time, because that was when Tiger Woods got in a crash or something, and he was injured or something. And people were talking about it, and it happened like the day before. I'm like, oh, I hadn't even heard about that. And people are like, where have you been? But anyway, how much do I need to know about the Kardashians or what's going on with Elon Musk?
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that. I think that's where your look does play in your advantage. Like maybe he did just crawl out of a rock.
Yeah.
Right.
Serious. So that's part of it. That's part of what's been in my media diet, or what I've been consuming. And then the other things I'm looking around because I don't usually carry physical books around with me, but this one, From the Core by John Wineland. What's that subtitle? A New Masculine Paradigm for Leading with Love, Living Your Truth, and Healing the World. It's that kind of blurb, isn't it?
Yeah. Masculine.
You know this guy?
No.
I think he's an amazing teacher, like really a profound teacher. This book is something he's just recently published, but my wife signed me up for a workshop with him a couple of years ago. And it was in LA, and we went there, and it was sold out. I think he capped it at 50 people, but people had come from literally around the world. And it was an expensive workshop, and it was intense. It was like 3 days. And I'm like, who is this guy? He doesn't have a podcast. He doesn't have a TV show. He doesn't have a book. I haven't seen him on the internet, like a YouTube channel. Like it was literally just word of mouth was selling out these programs and about, spiritual intimacy and embodied masculinity and divine feminine work and things like this. And this workshop we did was over it was actually over the Valentine's Day weekend, which is really appropriate. Yeah. But I took away so much that has helped me to be more patient, I think, and kind and loving in my marriage than I probably would have otherwise been. And I'm so glad that John has finally published his book.
Yeah, well, I definitely want to look at that. The word, I mean, I resonated. That's not the right word. I triggered to the word masculinity.
Oh, really? Tell me about that.
In a good way.
Yeah.
I have positive relationships to that word, but I would say the last 18 months, we've just kind of been bombarded with masculine toxicity.
Mm.
What have you learned just as a man, as a business owner, as a male coach? How are you mindful of masculinity, and when to lean into that, when to not lean into that? Does it change when you're in a different crowd or with more feminine energy? What have you learned?
Yeah, some of what I've learned, and John is quick to acknowledge, he was a student of David Dita, The Way of the Superior Man, for more than 10 years, studied very closely with him. And so he draws a lot of his thought from Dita's work and others and his own life and experience and so forth. But one of the things that John teaches that I find really valuable is he'll talk about the masculine as that which masculinity as consciousness and that which craves freedom. That ultimately that's what its core yearning is for. And even to back up half a step, that this does not necessarily correspond with male and female, right? Masculine and feminine, although we often tend to think it does.
Yeah, we do.
But each of us has both within us. And what we're ultimately looking for, if we're going to be happy and healthy and fulfilled, is a balance, some kind of a balance, or at least an awareness and an honoring of those energies within us and within our relationship. Right. So there's an aspect to this that's almost mystical or elemental.
I like this.
But I think that's true. And when he says then that the masculine's essential yearning is for freedom, and that's where anything that will impinge on a masculine oriented being, on their sense of freedom, is going to feel frustrating, stymieing, irritating, this and kind of
freedom, not synonymous with selfishness.
Yeah, not with selfishness per se. So that's a masculine orientation, and the feminine is of love, is of ultimately. So this really, I think, a beautiful concept of the masculine is that which creates space and structure, and the feminine is that which fills it. And that a feminine energy is not just about love, but it's also about flow and about movement and about the kinetic aspects of, okay, you have something defined, you have an evening, and the masculine brings structure to it. It's a time, it's a start, it's an end. And then the feminine aspect of ourselves, or perhaps of our partner, fills that with something. So again, it can sound a little esoteric right off, but John talks about these things in ways
it's in the book.
Yeah, it's in the book. So
I'm going to get it.
Okay. If you get, I'd love to talk to you about it and see what your thoughts are and what you apply. I will tell you this one thing that really has deepened the quality of my relationship with my wife. And that John taught me when we did that weekend seminar was he would say, look, the feminine is always testing the masculine, partly because it's looking to know that the masculine is trustworthy. It's not just the masculine creates the structure, but there's an expectation, particularly from the feminine, that the masculine has an integrity to that structure, that I'll be home when I say I will, that I'm with who I'm with, that I'm doing the things I'm doing, like all of this, that there's a truthfulness to all of that. And so then what John said is, look, if you find yourself being tested, being challenged, being questioned by a feminine partner, it's not that she's necessarily, it's not nagging. It's not, even complaining. It's not demanding. I mean, you could experience it that way, and many of us do.
Sure.
But it's that the feminine is actually showing you what the world wants from you, what the world wants from you.
Like that. Yeah, it's confirming, it's clarifying, it's connecting, it's communicating.
Yeah. Is it more fierceness? Is it more tenderness? Is it more truth? Is it, more vulnerability? And to see that and not just go, oh, well, this one person is doing this thing and then is this kind of person, but instead it's calling me to an awareness of where I lack integrity, or where, I'm maybe not as grounded as I could be, or as conscious as I could be. So
I think that book's gonna be the right timing. We just dropped off our last youngest child at college, and now empty nesters. And this could be a nice reminder, refresh of kind of setting the tone in a new reality. I like it.
Right on.
Another way to look at our core.
Yeah.
All right. What's the title of the book? Remind me.
No, it's From the Core. From the Core.
From the Core. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Good.
So that, and then I've been reading a couple books written by a guy named David Cadavy, but he's written a couple books about creativity. And I mean, really, I think they're about living well, but it's about expressing our truth. So he's written one called The Heart to Start, Stop Procrastinating and Start Creating, Getting Art Done. That's the subtitle of that one.
I like that.
And then his next book, and he has a podcast called Love Your Work that I've listened to a few episodes now. And I'm really, first of all, I'm amazed at podcasts. Here we are recording a podcast. But first of all, like how amazing it is that all these people who have these interests or these talents are out there producing these podcasts and putting them into the world. And most of them are free. And a lot of them are actually really high quality. David's is one that's very thoughtful. Like it's evident to me, he puts a lot of himself into it. And I had never heard of him before I invited him to be on my show a few weeks ago, but I'm really glad I discovered him. And his most recent book, Mind Management, Not Time Management, Productivity When Creativity Matters, Getting Art Done. I've loved this book. And in this book, he talks about how basically the lies we tell ourselves that prevent us from bringing our art into the world, and how we can think more effectively to overcome those impediments to sharing our work.
Here's why I'm smiling. So my article today is from September Psychology Today, and it's titled 6 Signs You're Lying to Yourself. How to recognize when your confidence is covering up your self-deception.
Oh, how perfect. And what a great segue. Look at that. So let's go to the wisdom of the pages.
Yeah. So Evan Parks, doctorate of psychiatry, specializes in pain rehabilitation. So 6 signs you're lying to yourself, how to recognize when your confidence is covering up your self-deception. I'm so curious because I still haven't scrolled down.
So you haven't even now read that?
No.
Okay. So what's your take on this? How can you know when you're lying to yourself?
Yeah. So I had lunch with my wife, and so she participated in this. So the first thing that kind of came to our mind is, how would you know? 6 signs. Ask your spouse and your friends. And sometimes you don't even have to ask. Sometimes they'll just tell you.
Yeah.
Where your confidence is covering up your self-deception of like, really? One more time? Yet again, you're going to make this promise? That's one that came to my mind. The other one is the mirror. So if you're making things around health related or diets or strength, I mean, if you look in the mirror, man, the mirror reveals, right? Get a full length mirror and reveal that birthday suit. The lie is staring right back at you. The other one we looked at is being busy versus being productive. Could be a sign that you're lying to yourself, that your confidence is covering up your self-deception. The fourth one is excuses or blame shifting. That there's always this reason why. I wanted to, but this happened and that happened, and it's not my fault. That would be the fifth one. And the sixth one is your bank account.
Say more.
There's just this idea of being an entrepreneur, of being a hustler, having side gigs, or if you're listening to this podcast, you might have a mindset of I want to start coaching, and you've just got all of this self-confidence, but the bank account is empty or negative, and so at some point there's in some way that you're lying to yourself.
Yeah. And
so the evidence is you're not generating income, right? You're reading all the books and you've created a website and you have a podcast and you have a business card and you got all these things and you don't have a client. And so I think there's that go back to what that Iranian world champion kickboxer was talking about. you might not be training at a fight level yet. What do you think of? What comes to your mind with 6 signs of, are you lying to yourself?
That's interesting. On that last point that you mentioned about like check your bank account, kind of check the scoreboard, see if the evidence is congruent with the story you're telling yourself. And this is one that I actually think about a lot. Like I'll think about, so I'm going to kind of digress for just a moment. I mean, it's still on this topic, right? But I'll ask this question a lot about, was Michael Jordan a champion before he ever won a championship? Mm-hmm. And, in a literal sense, no, he didn't have, you couldn't look him up on Wikipedia to see how many, back then Wikipedia didn't exist, but it wouldn't have listed champion. There were no gold medals. There were no, NBA finals trophies. There was no Hall of Fame induction. There was nothing to indicate, there was no hardware to show that Michael Jordan was a champion. But in another way, you could be darn sure that the story he was telling himself was that he was a champion. And it's part of the persona that he embodied. It was what he lived into. It was what he proved to the world. Right. So, and I'm reminded of this because David Cadavy, he actually talks about this Evel Knievel. He said that Evel Knievel would tell, and I never had the chance to hear this. I've never heard this before. I read it in David's book, but he said that every time Evel Knievel met someone, he would tell them, like right up front, I'm going to jump the Grand Canyon. And guess what? He never did. He jumped buses and stadiums and other things, but it was this fact that he let this dream guide him. So it's kind of interesting to me that where is the balance between like living a lie and living a dream that hasn't happened yet, living into a future that hasn't come to pass.
Well, I like your distinction there, but my mind goes to that, but that's not living the lie. I think they were doing all of the behaviors, the leading indicators that for all intents and purposes should lead to that level of accomplishment.
Yeah. And
I think the key words here is that your confidence is covering up self-deception. So if I had the same dream as Michael Jordan, there's a lot of self-deception that's happening because I just don't have the ability to even begin with. I could give my best effort and I'm not going to be able to dunk this basketball.
Yeah.
Ever. Self-deception. That's the lie.
Yeah, that's true. And this whole conversation too makes me think about this saying by the philosopher and mathematician Bertrand Russell, who said the whole problem with the world is that fools and fanatics are always so certain of themselves, but wiser people are so full of doubts. Yeah. So how do we know when we're being one of those fools or fanatics that's so full of confidence? And for me, like I'll go back to a very mystical level. I think it's mystical about if you can say it, it's not true. And if you can think it, it's not true. And even if you can find evidence and even if you can find agreement, other people, right? The whole world, even if the whole world believes something and it's not accurate, it doesn't make it true.
That's right.
And it's possible that the whole world believes something that's false. We have for a long time, as you know, the history of science tells us that.
Yes.
So the thing for me then is that there's a liberation in that of saying, look, nothing I believe is true. Like literally nothing. I don't even know how to know what the truth is. I don't know how to discern reality with these 5 senses in my intellect. I literally don't know how. But then what that opens up is I go, look, whether I believe I'm the greatest in the world or I believe I'm a pile of dirt, neither one of those is true. So then the question isn't, is what I'm believing true? Is what I'm believing empowering me? Is it serving me to be the person I want to be, to live the life I want to live, to make the contribution that I want to make? So I guess that's maybe almost sidestepping or spiritually bypassing the entire question.
Oh, I think you just validated it because I could then follow up and then say, okay, brilliant. I'm following your argument here and the tenets that you would put in place. What signs would you look for that what you are saying that would be a good thing are in fact a good thing, that you are making a difference? What would be the signs you'd be looking for? So just to read it in the reverse, 6 signs that you're telling yourself the truth.
And that then to me, it goes to physiology. What am I feeling in my body when I say something, when I think about something, when I move towards something physically or a person? Am I feeling tension or am I feeling trepidation? Am I feeling tightness or openness? Is there a relaxation and a sense of expansion, or am I feeling contraction?
Right.
And to me, that's where the body mind, the body and the mind together checking in with, am I on course? Like, is this my path? Is this true? Is this my truth, so to speak?
Right.
And am I feeling peace and relaxation? And Dean, I'm reminded, I just want to share this brief story. I have a client and a friend who signed up with a coaching program I did a few years ago. And when I asked him at the outset, how will you know this worked for you? What do you want to get out of it? And how will you know it worked? And he said, I will know my purpose. And this was a successful entrepreneur. He had already had an exit. He was running another company. He had all the freedom and the resources to go do what he wanted to in the world, but he didn't have a sense of purpose. And so he signed up because he wanted to find his purpose. And he did the course. I didn't talk to him for more than a year. He came to an event I hosted and I saw him and I said, I've been thinking about you. And I wondered, what's your sense of purpose now? And he said, oh yeah, I don't really think about it a lot anymore, but I do feel more peace. And I went, yes.
Yeah. Success.
Yeah. Right. And how often we enter into one effort thinking we want one thing, but we're really trying to get something else.
Yeah.
So to me, this whole thing about listening, like, what is it? Are we feeling more peace at the end of a day? Or are we feeling frustrated? Are we feeling anxious? Are we feeling drained and burned out? That to me is a sign that we're, what is it? What did you ask? Like living the truth?
Yeah. Yeah. Signs that you're living the truth versus signs that you're lying to yourself. The confidence is overreaching or covering self-deception. Well, I think about something that Marshall Goldsmith, our friend, says. These 3 questions: is what you're doing having a positive impact on people? And a lot of the people that you and I know would say yes. His next question is, if you were to do that and do more of that, would that make you uncomfortable? Or to tell people what you're doing, would that make you uncomfortable? And a lot of us say yes. And he's like, so what's more important? You helping and doing more for people, or your feeling of comfort? I think a lot of them want to say, well, it's better for me to go help people. It may not be the case, though. I mean, because you're saying, if this is causing me to not have peace, if this is causing me to be uncomfortable, is there a moral obligation for me to go and do more?
Yeah. And even that is, it's so individual, right? Because we've all heard the saying, like, life begins at the end of your comfort zone and growth occurs where your comfort ends and stuff like that. And I think, and find your edge and lean into it and stuff. And I think there's wisdom in that to a point. But if it's then causing like mental health issues, because you're so far outside, or it's really not your, so again, we all get to answer this question for ourselves.
That's really, really good. Yeah. And so when I've had the opportunity to coach Olympic athletes and to talk to them after they have achieved, they're devastated. They're so disappointed because all of this effort to achieve this thing, and now they've achieved it, and then realized, I don't know if this level of sacrifice was worth this. I mean, everything, back to that mental health aspect as maybe a sign to look for. Now, they're proud of what they've accomplished, but boy, there was a higher cost than they were anticipating. And then that great Western disease of I'll be happy when. Yeah. So then do you re-up with that next unbelievable, unattainable thing to go do that, to find your quote purpose? Yeah, great conversation.
Yeah. So what does the author of this article say?
Yeah, great. I was almost ready to transition to yours. All right, let's scroll down. So how to spot self-deception. Oh, this is interesting. So the first one is the weather cancels your plans. I wanted to be able to see your face when I say this.
I love that.
So all right. So what does she mean by it? Or what does he mean by this? So when you take a stand for something truly important, but a little bit of rain is not, and a little bit of rain is not going to stop you. Neither will the heat, cold, snow. It's kind of like, I guess, the mailman. You're lying to yourself if plans need to be canceled by something that's just mildly inconvenient, like the weather.
Yeah, I've heard Father Gregory Boyle, the guy that started Homeboy Industries and works with, formerly incarcerated people in California. He refers to this as a no matter whatness. cultivating that sense. And, ultimately it's a will, it's a determination, a self-determination. So
right.
I think that's really interesting to be able to look outside ourselves and see if there's something in the environment that we're then using as an excuse to escape. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. The weather. The second one, you have no plan. He says, this should be obvious, but it's often not. I mean, so you have this idea of losing weight or getting in shape or writing a book or starting a business, and we don't have a plan. There's nothing written down whatsoever. You might be lying to yourself.
That's actually very profound, because where my mind goes with that is actually to suicide, right? And people who are trained working with people who are suicidal, the question they're trained to ask is, what's your plan? And when somebody says, well, at 5 o'clock tonight, I'm going to go stand in front of a train or whatever, it's like, it was already serious, the fact that it ended the conversation, but the question, what's your plan?
That's good. It's a great reminder. That's a great reminder. All right. Third one, you don't really know yourself. So do you know what kind of stories your mind is telling about you and who you are? So we need to catch these automatic thoughts and focus our attention on the person we need to become, the direction we want to head. So, yeah, what did you hear in that? I just think none of us know ourselves. If we're honest, we might know some of our habits and tendencies and preferences and so forth. But I do think about the Abraham Maslow quote about we can step back into safety or forward toward growth. Like in any moment, we have two choices. And growth must be chosen again and again, and fear must be opened again and again. Right. Yeah. What I hear in that of not knowing yourself is the negative talk of, well, I always fail when I make a plan, or I never do this, or I always cheat. That self-talk as opposed to changing this to that idea of yet, right? I'm not good at this. Well, yet.
Right.
To leave it open for. Because you can be telling yourself a lie that you can't do it, and that you have these struggles and you have to protect your ego. All right, the fourth one, you have a weak choice muscle. So if you had a choice between one donut now and two donuts much later, would you pick the donuts in front of you every time? Oh, this is back to the marshmallow test, the delayed gratification. So you're not making good choices, is what they're saying. And then the fifth one is you don't see your options. So one of the struggles we have with choices is not seeing them. So we automatically move away from discomfort, usually in ways that are not helpful in the long run or healthy.
That, to me, that's totally congruent with you don't have a plan. Like if you have a plan, everything becomes like you can use anything toward the realization of your goal.
Yeah. Yeah. Otherwise, if I don't have a plan, then it's just, I don't have any options. It is what it is. And then the last one, you lack accountability. And so the more to invite people into your lives to help with the change process. And there's coaching 101. So one of the best things you can do to keep yourself going is to join others who are on the same journey.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's the whole Buddhist thing of the Sangha, the community, joining with people. And that one to me is interesting because like, if you look, I can't name any offhand right now, but there are examples, and this is throughout probably every industry, that people come together and, whether they're writers, whether they're film directors, whether they're visual, painters or other visual artists. And then it's like, there's a circle, like a coffee group or a book club or something. And then like half of them become household names,
Yeah.
But the other half or more in many other clubs and groups besides, they never become famous or successful, quote unquote, successful. So I think what I'm trying to say with this is, I think there's some value, very much there's some value in joining with other like-minded people who are striving for what you are. But there's also the possibility of falling into the like, ain't it awful club. Like, we'd all day someday we're all going to make it,
Yeah. Yeah. So choose wisely.
Yeah.
Right. Misery does love company.
Yeah. And I never heard this saying until I interviewed someone who's in the MG 100 also, David Burkus.
Oh, yeah. Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Yeah. But David was the one who said to me, he said, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. It's like, I never heard that before.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. And then back to that exact point of you lack accountability. That's profound. I mean, just verbalizing, like having a plan, saying something out loud, writing a goal. And that's the story in Think and Grow Rich, where Charles Schwab went to I think it was a steel factory, and they had no quotas. They had no goals.
Right.
And then he wrote a number on the concrete with a piece of chalk. And then all of a sudden the productivity went up simply because they had a goal.
Yes.
And they wanted to beat it. But then in our lives, like, so the power of declaring something, stating it publicly, quantifying it, and then having some kind of accountability structure that's going to help keep us true.
Right. Yeah. And to avoid these little nuanced excuses like the weather.
That's right.
Because, man, if you can't get past that, then these other wise sayings don't even really come into play.
Yeah.
Not even a little bit. Okay. Sure. I'm so curious. What'd you find? So
what I found was in Success Magazine. So my wisdom of the pages this month comes from Success Magazine. And the article it featured the former monk, now best-selling author and coach, Jay Shetty, who wrote the book, Think Like a Monk. And the article was all about Jay Shetty and building a personal brand. So this kind of, I guess, could cover be a great, earn recognition and money, falls under the earn recognition money.
Right.
The things that stood out to me about this, I thought was pretty interesting distinction. So in the article, it was one of these that was almost like a profile where, the author of the article was with Jay during a photo shoot. And earlier that day, they'd been in New York City and Jay had been on the Today Show. And then, they were in this event space where Jay's getting his hair done and, he's able to talk while they're prepping for this photo shoot. And in this article, the author describes that Jay, when he was on the Today Show, he's asked by the producers, what do you want us to put on your lower third? What do you want us to put? In other words, what do you want us to put on the screen when we have the little overlay that describes who you are? Right. And they put something like mindfulness expert and best-selling author. And Jay talked about how those are really vehicles. What he wishes they would have put instead was his purpose, which is to help. I think Jay's purpose, he said, was to help. It was some number. I forget the number. It was like 100,000 people or 1 million people find their purpose. That's Jay's purpose at the moment, or what he's declared.
Okay.
But I thought this was interesting that he distinguished between describing oneself in terms of one's purpose and in terms of one's role or title, and seeing that title or that role as merely a vehicle for the purpose.
Okay, I can get there.
So I've thought a lot on this. Like when I studied with Jack Canfield more than 10 years ago, and Jack, he teaches these foundational concepts of personal growth and good living and so forth. And of course, purpose was one of the modules. And I wrote this big flowery statement. He had this process to go through and articulate your life purpose. And I did. And I used it for years and years. And then it wasn't until the last couple of years that I thought, what if my purpose was just to be happy and help others be happy? Like, what if that was it in any moment? And what I love about a purpose is that, again, kind of like that conversation, the weather doesn't derail the purpose.
Right.
External circumstances don't need to do, but in any moment, that purpose is available to me. Now, some conditions or situations make it harder to be happy.
Right.
Or maybe to help others be happy. But for me, I just thought, man, that could be a pretty cool life purpose.
I like that. I coach to this idea of you should have a goal for every conversation. Do you think that's possible for you?
It's possible. Sure.
And if you did, what is it? Like, what would be the default goal for every conversation?
Man, immediately what I think of is there's at least 3 kinds of conversations, because there's the kind of conversation I just want to enjoy. I just want to interact with someone. I want to relate with them. I might want to show them they're important to me. I love them. I care about them, that kind of thing. But at the core of that kind of conversation, I just want to enjoy it. Then there's conversations where I want to learn something or I want to become something. I want to know, how did you sell so many books, or how did you start your podcast? So there's like these conversations that there's very much an outcome I'm looking for. Right. I would say it's self-interested. Like I said, I want to be able to produce a result in the world. I want to become something that I'm not currently. I want to solve a problem I have, that kind of thing. But then there's another kind of conversation that's like, that is a result in the world. It's not necessarily about me becoming something or achieving something, but it's a result in the world. Like, hey, please quit using single service plastic items and then throwing them in a landfill, or, please quit for employees. This might be like, please quit stealing my office supplies or something.
Right.
But I think there's at least those three kinds: the kind I enjoy, the kind where I learn and grow, and the kind where I produce some kind of result in the world.
I really like how you came up with that so quickly. The common theme where I thought you were going to go is how you started with your life purpose. So state your life purpose again around happy.
So I haven't adopted this wholeheartedly. Like when I show up, when I roll out of bed in the morning, boom, this is present, and I'm focused on it as I go throughout every activity every day. But I did think, what if my purpose was simply to be happy and to help others be happy?
And now to do that in those three dominant types of conversations, because I think it's possible.
Sure.
And that's what I love. I love that very much. And I would say I've had two of those three conversations. I don't know if I've had that third conversation with you, to me, but how I experience you is that purpose that you just described.
Mm. Well, thank you, Dave.
You're welcome. Like even when we were in Salt Lake City, after going on a 4-mile hike, and we were looking for hydration, and we ended up going into the wrong place.
Right.
So we were looking for information, but even then we showed up in your life purpose of being happy and making someone else feel happy. That's very meaningful. Yeah. Be it a waitress, the valet, or someone who's extremely important. And to be able to live that out, it makes a tremendous difference. And your consistency in doing that is what makes it so true.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I appreciated this article, this reminder, from Jay, as someone that I think is a pretty remarkable teacher. And ultimately, I think Success Magazine was looking for a way to feature him while delivering value to readers beyond just, we got to spend some time with Jay Shetty. Right. So when they wrap it around this building a personal brand, and then they asked Jay toward the end of the article, it was written, what was his take on this? And what he said was interesting. It's pretty high level. So, it's a concept or a framework, might be valuable to people listening. I haven't wrestled with it, so it's not supremely valuable to me, but I'd love to talk with you about it for a few minutes here. What he said is, he said that he thinks in terms, when it comes to building a brand, and specifically when it comes to creating content, because content and a brand are almost inseparable.
Yeah, I agree.
Not necessarily often, right? Is he said he thinks in these three dimensions. He didn't use the word dimension, but genre, role, and format. And what he means by that is, he says, look, the genre, that there's 5 basic feelings that every successful, meaning every viral piece of content has. This is his, right? This is his opinion. I'm just kind of relating this partly to explore the idea, partly in the hope it might be useful to someone. But Jay's contention is that every successful piece of content we create has one of 5 feelings that it delivers: adventure, humor, inspiration, emotion, or surprise. I don't know what emotion is. It's moving, because I don't know, it could be sad, could be uplifting, but then it would be inspiration, right? So adventure, humor, inspiration, emotion, or surprise. That's his contention. But then you go, okay, so you're creating a piece of content aiming at eliciting or creating an emotion. and one of these 5 emotions.
Right.
Then he says, then there's
it's evocative.
Yeah, it's evocative, right? And then he says there's a role, and the role is whatever draws your attention or uses your talents. And we all get to figure this out for ourselves. Is it interviewing people? Is it writing words? Is it creating? Is it taking pictures or creating other art, through technology or something else? So then what's the role that you're using as you attempt to evoke those feelings? And then what's the format? So there's a role that you take, but there's a format that your work follows, whether it's on a stage, whether it's scripted, whether it's unscripted, whether it's a blog, whether it's an interview, right? This kind of thing. So the assertion is that once we find the role that we play and the format that is going to allow us to then bring those feelings to people, then we'll have the chance to create this content that will be our brand. And here's the statement right here. So the magazine writes, the author says, choose the right format for your role, or vice versa, and drive toward one of those 5 elemental sensations, and you will have created a brand. And then Jay says, you're not thinking about how you're perceived. You're thinking about how does someone feel after they engage with who you are. That's what a brand is. A brand is how someone else feels about how you engage. I was like, that's pretty interesting, isn't it?
It is very interesting. I've taken my notes, and I'm now it's got me thinking about your lighting versus my lighting, your background versus my background. The type of people you and I attract, how they're similar, how they're different, the type of audiences we have.
Yeah, what they want, right?
What they want and how we want them to feel. Of those 5, adventure, humor, inspiration, emotion, and surprise, are those the 5?
That's what, adventure, that's right. Adventure, humor, inspiration, emotion, and surprise.
Which one of those most closely jumps out to you? I mean, I know there's a whole lot of it depends, but which one do you think is, you already know the answer. What is it?
For me?
Yeah.
The one that appeals to me most personally, and the one that I hope my work delivers to others, is inspiration.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
What about you?
Adventure and humor.
Yeah,
I mean, you know what I love? Yes, I mean, what I love about even this brick wall is it's just the comedy type scene.
Yeah, it does look a bit like a stand-up.
Yeah, when I get asked that question, what would you love to do if money wasn't necessary? I mean, I'd love to be a stand-up comic. I love adventure. I love inspiration too. I mean, I like all of these, but I think my brand is adventure and humor.
I could see that.
My tagline and/or my purpose is to inspire insight and shift perspective that has real meaning. Right? My purpose isn't to choose it for you of what should you do, but I'll do whatever's necessary. Be the fool if necessary to inspire insight and shift perspective. I love that. If that's my purpose, I love that.
I think you're there. I think though, I would add to yours though, and maybe this is implicit in what you're saying, but there is, for me, like when I kind of read your brand, so to speak, I think there's service, a contribution or impact. I think that's something that's evident with you. That and part of what's there at the root of that, I think, is care.
Yeah, I think that my 3, these maybe for the first time, but adventure, advocacy, and awe. Right. So the advocacy part, that service side, to bring a voice, to assist, to partner, that's really deep inside of me.
Yeah, I know that. Well, I think this Wisdom of the Pages was, I enjoyed it, and I'm grateful that we did it, whether it's how we can know and maybe better quit lying to ourselves or it's about personal branding. So So I thought that was cool. And then I know we're just about at the end of our time. So what shall we end with? Do we have something we normally end with? I know we didn't get through everything, but I also know.
Just your 3 questions, around living a better life or recognition or money.
How to live a good life, how to earn recognition and money, and how to be a great coach. And we've covered a lot of that, I think in our conversation already. But with anything that brings up for you, Dean, what would you like? What's maybe our final thoughts, or what would we like to leave people listening with?
Something that's been on my mind, hearing a lot about emotions and what do we do with these emotions, and even, just these roles and the genres and adventure and humor and inspiration, surprise and emotion. Here's what Plato would argue: that emotions were a source of disorder and should be controlled by the rational part of the soul. And then Aristotle agreed, and then went on to say that the irrational passions are like disease, which infect the soul. I hope that's not how we see it today. So I think there's something to lean into this highly sensitive person. Brene Brown talks about these 84 emotions. And most of us in our daily activity can identify with 3 or 4 of them. That's leaving 80 of them outside of our reach. Let's don't do that. I think as coaches, to be able to inspire and shift perspective and invite them into who they can be, we've got to get more comfortable with these emotions. They're not a disease. They're not to be rationed or rationalized away. We need to get comfortable with those and finding our true expression in that emotional wheel. I'm trying to get better at that. I hope you're trying to get better at that as a listener.
Yeah. That's powerful. I heard it said once that emotion is life, right? And that emotion is what moves us, right? That same root of, and I think the Latin emovere, which is like to move out, is the same root as emotion. And looking at the emotion as something that has a message and that has a motivation, and honoring that and not trying to shut it up or deny it. I think that's a really beautiful message. I think it's important for our own health and enjoyment, because some emotions are their own reward. Just feeling gratitude, feeling joy, feeling playfulness or curiosity. Other emotions are painful, but if we interpret those as, hey, there's a message here and even a gift.
Yeah. So good. Brilliant. Emotion is life. Powerful. Yeah. What a great way to end.
Yeah. And the thing that I would say too, that I think goes right along with what you're saying is about, and this to me, it even transcends the Jay Shetty, the genre role, the format, like all this is authenticity. And it's an overused word, but allowing ourselves to be ourselves, in public, in private, and we won't always be the exact same person in every moment, in every situation, with every group of people, but that there is an essence to us and there is a truth inside us that is seeking expression, and being willing to share that with other people, for its own sake, for our own sake. This is the thing David Kadavy says. He talks about how our ego is always at odds with our art, and that our ego is intended to keep us safe, but our art is seeking expression, and that we will never become self-realized or self-actualized without making our art, without putting it into the world, because it's the truest expression of who we are. And I love his description of that his ego is like the shell that his art is trying to break out of and his self is trying to break out of.
Yeah, great imagery.
Yeah, it's really, really a beautiful thing. And being willing to allow that part of ourselves to be seen, and whatever those emotions are that are driving it, and not to make ourselves wrong for any emotion that we feel, because all emotion, this was something that I heard too about every emotion. All emotions are human. They're not always all healthy, but at a time, every emotion is healthy. Every emotion is appropriate. Now, there's times that we can get stuck in patterns of emotion and they can become dysfunctional. They can become healthy, but allowing ourselves, and John Wineland, by the way, this was a thing in that workshop, back to John Wineland.
Mhm.
That he said on the other side of any emotion felt fully is peace. And it's when we don't allow ourselves to feel the depth of whatever it is that's yearning to be felt, that we get trapped in these like modes of existence that are less than fulfilling, less than peaceful.
Amazing. Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you for today.
Dean. Yeah, it was my pleasure. And I know we're at the very, very end of our time. And I have another project that I want to ask you about. And maybe we can even shift some of these if we keep going.
Yeah.
So let's talk more about what the future of the Coaches Commonplace book is. And I want to talk with you about one project in particular I'm interested in pursuing that maybe you can be a part of, or an accountability partner for me in, or something like that.
I'm intrigued. I'm leaning in, my friend.
Okay. Well, next time, that's the teaser.
Woohoo.
So, all right. We'll talk again soon. So thank you, Dean. And thank you, everyone listening.